Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 p.m. Members of council are assembled when you're ready to begin.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all members, everyone in the gallery, everyone watching via the live stream. We're glad everybody's with us. Second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Davinsky has that this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, we acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing, along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you. Third item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Asking a member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm declaring a conflict of interest on items 7.1, 13.1, and 13.2. They relate to the draft plan of subdivision S-2025-004, the local official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, and the related proposed bylaws. I own property which is located directly across the street from the proposed development and the new street entrance.
Thank you. Any further declarations? I have one. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest with respect to agenda item 11.2.1, the notice of the motion on the Highway 21 speed limit. I'm declaring that pecuniary interest because I am a shareholder in a business that owns property along that section of Highway 21. All right, if there's no further declarations, of course, you can declare one any time you need to. No additions, deletions, or amendments, so we're on to the minutes. I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of August 10th, 2026 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? The Vice Deputy Mayor and Councillor Grace. Discussion to the minutes. Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Grace, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, I know the clerk has confirmed this, but I just wanted to confirm again that the complete designation application for the 160 liter lane heritage designation will be attached to the published minutes. Thanks.
The clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. The complete application for that heritage designation will appear on the HTML version of the approved minutes.
Okay, any further questions or comments of the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Okay. So that moves on then to item 7, reports of municipal officers. Few reports there. The first one is 7.1, draft plan of subdivision S-2025-004, local official plan amendment L-2025-016, and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-027, recommendation with respect to SKG Holdings / Chantry Crossing. So we'll turn that to the planner, Karina Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. I'm presenting the applications tonight on behalf of the planner, Julie Steeper, who is not available to attend this evening. A draft plan of subdivision application has been submitted to create a residential subdivision. That subdivision would consist of 33 single detached lots and 18 townhouse lots, fronting on proposed extensions of Albert Street and Emerald Drive. There are also blocks proposed for highway commercial, walkway, stormwater management, open space, reserve, and highway widening purposes. The draft plan of subdivision and the related local official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment were previously presented at a public meeting held in April of this year. The draft plan of subdivision has undergone just one minor revision relating to the cul-de-sac bulb and the alignment of the rail trail in proximity to that bulb. Those changes are minor, but overall the lot fabric as well as the proposed road layout is generally consistent with what was presented at the public meeting. The local official plan amendment has been submitted to amend the boundaries of the existing designation in the town's official plan to align with the proposed lot layout in the draft plan of subdivision. The subject lands are currently designated highway, commercial, residential, and open space. And the proposed official plan amendment would maintain those designations, but again, would align the boundaries of those designations with the proposed lot and block fabric. The zoning bylaw amendment seeks to rezone the property from highway commercial with a holding provision, residential first density with a holding provision, and open space also with a holding provision. The proposed zoning would introduce a residential third density to allow for the townhouse blocks. The proposed single-family units would be in the residential first density special zone, and the highway commercial would also have a special highway HC 37 zone as well. The open space does not have any proposed special provisions. The applications before council this evening have considered comments from the public. We did receive over 60 comments from members of the community, which included various concerns with respect to flooding, stormwater management, traffic, and other issues. We also received comments from agencies on the applications, and those are included in the agenda package for you this evening. We would note that the town staff, as well as their consulting engineer, did flag outstanding concerns, particularly with respect to hydrogeology and stormwater management, and also concerns with respect to traffic and the noise barrier. For that reason, we are seeking and recommending to council this evening that the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment be approved, and that council support in principle approval of the draft plan of subdivision. That draft plan of subdivision report would then be written and taken to county council, as the county is the approval body for the draft plan of subdivision. We anticipated there may be some further adjustments to the language in the conditions, and we've been working diligently with town staff and the applicant to refine the language of those conditions. I would note upon my review and preparation for the meeting this evening, there was not a condition included with respect to an updated and final transportation report, and so we will be looking to add that before we take a report forward to county council. That concludes my presentation for this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. There is a resolution that council adopt bylaw 83-2026 for local official plan amendment L-2025-016 by SKG Holdings Incorporated, and that it be forwarded to Bruce County for approval. And that council approves zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-027 by SKG Holdings Incorporated and bylaw 84-2026. And that council support in principle County of Bruce approval of draft plan of subdivision S-2025-004 by SKG Holdings Incorporated in accordance with the draft plan attached and subject to resolution through conditions of draft approval of outstanding issues relating to servicing, stormwater management, hydrogeology, geotechnical conditions, and noise. Is there a mover and seconder for that resolution? Moved by Halpin, seconded by Mayette. Discussion. The Deputy Mayor and then Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I have a number of questions. I'm very concerned, though, about moving forward with something at the moment that there's an awful lot of unanswered questions and to be completed, to be received, to be reviewed, kinds of language in this. And in my opinion, it would be more appropriate for us to see a lot more already decided or determined or at least presented in a form that we can then have a discussion about it. So I'm not at the moment prepared to support the motion that has been put on the floor, because I do think there's an awful lot of unanswered questions. And the information that we have from the town's engineering consultant doesn't give me a great deal of confidence either, in that, you know, they often in their report said, you know, we don't have this yet. We can't comment on this. And so, but I do have some questions. What was not clear from the drawing, so I'll just run through them. Going from this, the special condition on the R1 zoning is about a couple of things, but one of them is reduction in the size of the lots. What's required at the moment is 450 square meters is the required lot size. The document suggests that it's going down to 400 square meters. What is that in terms of dimensions? They look to me to all be fairly similar in size, but even the town's engineer said that the drawing should have very specific lot sizes indicated, which led me to think that maybe they're not all the same size. What's the general size of the lots for the R1 parcel? Is it 50 by 100? Is it 40 by 80? What's the size of those lots?
Planner?
Yes, thank you for the question through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So the dimensions of the lots for the single family, they are in the range of 13.5 to appears up to 14.3 in some locations in terms of their frontage, and depths vary from 30 meters in some locations up to 37 I'm seeing in some locations.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you for that. I also was concerned when I read in the report that there was a comment from Saugeen about compensatory, I'm probably saying that the word wrong, compensatory planting areas to take into account the potential for lost trees. And the municipal response that there were no lands available for this kind of surprised me. Do we not have land somewhere in the entirety of Saugeen Shores? You know, Helliwell Park has a huge area that has some trees in it. I know it's over the size that was mentioned here. Lamont has a lot of land. You know, there's other parks in town that could handle trees. There used to be a tree farm out near the landfill. I get what was meant by the statement that there are no municipal lands available for compensatory plantings, whatever that word is.
Manager of Development Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So I think in general, the idea that the town should supply lands to offset tree removal to facilitate private development is maybe something that staff were indicating that we would not want to potentially set a precedent that this is what the town needs to do, is supply land. So if there's tree removal, the preference is that the developer find another private source to be able to plant those trees. There were discussions that happened internally for where there would be an appropriate spot to do tree compensation. And with our park staff and the facilities manager, I don't believe that there were lands that were identified that would be suitable to account for the number of trees that would be required.
The Deputy Mayor.
Well, thank you for that. That's not at all the impression I got from the report. So that's good additional information to have. I wanted to ask about the peat removal that's talked about in the report. Where does that go? How is peat that is somehow not desirable to leave somewhere? Where does it go, and how is it disposed of, or is it usable in some other fashion? I'm just curious where this peat would go.
Planner?
Yes, thank you for the question. So I don't have a good answer for you on where that material would go. My understanding is that there are fill transport regulations in the province in terms of the movement of fill material. So whether it would be regulated under that process, I'm not entirely certain, but I could look into that if that is information that you were looking for.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask a question about the references in the report to noise walls. You know, I'm a fan of berms with trees, and, you know, we had some success with that sort of addition to projects throughout Saugeen Shores, most notably in Southampton near this with the western side of the Tim Hortons property. Nice berm got installed there, and the trees have grown up. It's, I think it's doing what the intention was. In this report, though, that we've got before us, what's suggested as a good noise wall or the noise wall that's being included is a double thick wood fence. There's nothing in this, though, to tell me how that's better than a berm. So who ultimately makes the decision on what's appropriate for noise mitigation or for appropriate separation, in particular between abutting uses that are distinct and different? For example, the commercial lot that would back onto residential units, our zoning and other documents say there needs to be some sort of buffer there. Is a double thick wood fence equivalent to a berm? There's no mention in the report of a height. So I'm just curious, what are the pros and cons of both of them? Why is the report suggesting double thick wood fences over berms and plantings?
The planner?
Yes, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So my understanding is that the noise wall, the double fence is what's being proposed, as well as air conditioning for the unit so that they may be able to close their windows adjacent to any properties that are adjacent or within that buffer area of the highway. The details on what the final mitigation measure might be are still subject to discussion. So despite the fact that this report has identified that noise wall and the additional mitigation measures, as well as warning clauses to be included in the subdivision agreement for future landowners, those mitigation measures may be amended through the detailed design process. So if there is a desire or further need to understand why a wall has been chosen versus some other mitigation like a berm and retention of the existing trees on the lot, that can be refined through the final submission of the noise report to the satisfaction of the town and its consulting engineer.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I just have a couple more. In the planning report from the county, I just would like clarification on under the density category, and in the future, could we have numbered pages to make it a little easier? If we're going to be asking questions, we can refer to a page. Perhaps that might be helpful in some regard. But the density section, which I don't know what page it's on, it refers to, in one part it says, the residential portion of all developments that will be serviced with municipal sewer and water to achieve a minimum density of 15 units per gross hectare. With the layout, the density of the entire development meets this target. And then when I jump down to the next paragraph, it's the proposed residential development will have a density of 18.35 units per gross developable hectare. So my question is, what's the difference between per gross hectare and per gross developable hectare? Because our bylaw is looking at a minimum density per gross hectare. I'm just curious what this developable hectare means, but also with the layout, the density of the entire development meets this target. Is that referring to the entire, because this is phase 2 of a subdivision plan. So is that sentence referring to that the whole phase 1, phase 2 combination meets the target, or is it just referring to phase 2?
The planner.
Thank you for the question. So the density, the terminology, gross hectare or gross developable hectare, that they're essentially the same. And I think you've made note of that before. So we will be paying closer attention to that when we do prepare for the reports for council. The density is based on 15 units per gross hectare is the minimum, as you noted, for fully serviced areas. The 18.35 excludes the natural, the stormwater management ponds specifically. The density that you'll note on the draft plan of subdivision is actually 17 or just over 17 units per hectare. And so that also excluded the hazard land, or what would be the stormwater management block in this case, as well as the walkways and highway widenings, reserves, and right-of-ways.
The Deputy Mayor?
So the other question about with the layout, the density of the entire development meets this target. It's just this particular application, or is it looking at the entire development, which did include or does include phase one?
The planner?
Yes, thank you for that follow-up. So it would be just for this proposal, not the original phase one.
Deputy Mayor.
I'll just mention one more. I have a couple more, but I'll let other people, because maybe they'll come up with them. I was a little bit concerned that in the documents, a street that's Island Street is continually referred to as Island Drive. Just a little clarification point there. And at one point, there's a reference to some place called Subway Drive. I'm not too sure where that is in Southampton, but I'm pretty confident it's not in this part of Southampton. But you know, it just is concerning when there's typo errors like that really shouldn't happen. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I have a question regarding the hydrogeological environmental assessment. So my understanding is that there's been phase one hydrogeological environmental assessment completed, and that there is still a phase two outstanding. And we're being asked to approve a draft subdivision agreement pending successful completion of the phase two environmental assessment. Now, in here, it talks about the building types. Is the phase two environmental assessment dependent on whether the homes that are going to be built are on slab or whether they have basement? And if they're on slab, does that negate the need for the second phase EA on the hydrological conditions?
The planner.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So their applicant has submitted an updated phase one assessment, as you've noted. They've also submitted a draft phase two assessment, which has been circulated to the town and the consulting engineer who's doing the peer review for the town. That document, we've included a condition in the proposed conditions of draft approval, which would require finalization of that document. I understand in speaking with the proponent, that document is ready to be submitted in its final form. But the town did have some outstanding comments and concerns that we will review before that report is finalized. And so we are looking to include that as a condition of draft approval, and that be to the satisfaction of the town.
Councilor.
So we're gonna get the phase two report to our satisfaction, irregardless of the building types that are going to be there.
The planner.
Yes, thank you for the follow-up. So yes, there's also a condition included in the proposed conditions that would require all development to be slab on grade because of the high groundwater conditions. The phase two report is required regardless because there is residential uses proposed that will be on the ground floor.
Okay, further questions, Councilor Dubinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, most of my questions have been answered, not to my satisfaction, but they've been answered. I'm in agreement with the deputy mayor. I read this report. Granted, I did it between 1 and 2 in the morning one night when I couldn't sleep, but I read this report and it was one draft approval after another draft approval after this, after that. And I thought I came up with 12. Now, I could be wrong, but I thought I came up with 12 different things that hadn't been done yet. And I think we have to do the right thing. And the right thing may be allowing this subdivision to go ahead, but not, in my eyes, not the way it is right now. Because there are too many, as the deputy mayor said, unanswered questions. And I simply can't do that. I've looked at it again when I came here at 6 and looked at it again. And it's still one after another. an issue, a report, something is outstanding. So I can't at this time support this application. I would much rather us have far more information than we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. One of the proposed conditions of draft approval, condition 13 states about the slab on grade buildings, et cetera. But at the end of it, it says the cost to design and construct improvements to the downstream storm drainage systems as approved by the town of Saugeen Shores are solely responsible, or the sole responsibility of the owner. What, do we have any idea what those downstream improvements would mean? And I believe this is into catchment drain 12.
The planner?
Thank you through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So I don't know the specific details in terms of what upgrades are required, but there are substantial flooding issues that are still to be addressed to the satisfaction of the town and the consulting engineer to ensure that the current municipal infrastructure and any proposed upgrades are able to accommodate that stormwater management in the downstream location. So I can't give you specifics at this point, but that is a condition for that to be addressed and to be covered by the applicant.
The counselor?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I really support this development. I think I like what they're doing with the rail trail. I like how they're transferring land to us. I like how they're the tree retention. I think it is a well thought out. And I want to say that like I'm sorry for the difficulty in redoing this draft plan now, because it was certainly easier to do 20 years ago than it is today with the added regulation. But my biggest fear is the stormwater management and where that's going to go. And you know, just at our last council meeting, we talked about catchment 12, and there's $2.28 million worth of work to do to bring that up to grade. I really support this, but unfortunately, I feel like I need to see a few more of these reports finalized, the groundwater level and the stormwater management issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just was wondering through you to the planner, we talked about the environmental assessment of phase 2. How long have we had that plan, and where are we at with the review of the environmental assessment? When do we expect that to be firmed up?
The planner?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the environmental site assessment phase 2 was received on the draft report on May the 8th. We have not received the final version, and it has been circulated for town staff review as well as the peer review consultant. And so there are comments that are available and included in the package with respect to that assessment.
Deputy Mayor?
To the planner, you haven't received the final version from the developer, or you haven't seen the final version because of the delays with staff reviewing it? Where's the delay?
The planner?
Yes, thank you. So I can't speak entirely for where that delay might have occurred. I know we have been working diligently with town staff and the consultant for the applicant to resolve outstanding concerns.
The Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just, I think one of the things this council's been trying to work so hard to do is to speed up the planning process. And I just think that I don't think we need to be approving willy-nilly or haphazardly. I'm not suggesting that. But when I hear a report 4 months ago, Seems to be a long time, and I just think that, this plan was approved some 20 years ago and it lapsed, and I guess the question is, how many years ago did this plan lapse? Was it 10 years ago, 12 years ago? When did the original plan of subdivision lapse?
Planner?
Yes, thank you. So the original approval was in 2004 and it lapsed in 2015. So under the current Planning Act, that does allow for lapsed subdivisions to be potentially deemed not to have lapsed, but there are certain criteria that do need to be met, and this subdivision did not meet that criteria.
Vice Mayor.
So I think, there's a lot of good merit with this dating back 15, 20 years ago, and there's still a lot of merits today. I like the idea of the rail trail work that's going on. The Saugeen Rail Trail Association will back this 100%. I understand there's some progress being made with the traffic flow from Adelaide Street out on Albert Street. I thought at one point we received a grant for some work on the intersection there, but I just asked that question today, and staff are still getting back to me. I did receive one response, but I thought we had moved a little further ahead with the intersection changes there. We listened to the public, we applied for funding, and I think there's some good work happening behind the scenes. I think from a Ontario Land Tribunal standpoint, we went through this with Market Street too, and didn't support that. Of course, Land Tribunal came along and supported it and approved it. And I just wondering if, I'm not sure where this vote's going to go on this. I guess what I'm hearing from council, you just need more information. There's a lot of undone work yet. And I hope we can get that sooner than later, because I don't think we should hold up this planning process any further. At least let's just try and get it moved along. But I guess my question to staff, back to staff again, Mr. Mayor, would be, when do you see this? There's servicing, there's stormwater management, the hydrogeology assessment, phase 2 environmental assessment, geotechnical conditions. When will we receive that completed information? Are we at the mercy of the developer to get that information to us? I'm just trying to understand how much they're not giving to us versus how much we need to speed the process up a little along from a staffing standpoint. So I'm a little confused with what's missing. I kind of like the proven principle, because I think this is forthcoming, this information. I don't think we should hold up any further. But when will we see something again back at this table? Would it be a month, 2 months? Is it the new council? When is this coming back?
The planner?
Thank you for the question. So just on your earlier comment with respect to when you might see this application again, it's provided on whether or not or how council decides on the application this evening. So if council were to approve the amendments and to support in principle the draft plan of subdivision, the next step would be for this draft plan of subdivision application to be brought forward to county council for a decision. And if that was also a favorable decision, then this item would likely return to this council with the agreement, but I perhaps would turn that over to the manager for the town.
Manager?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. Yes, that's correct. If it advances to a draft approval, the next time this would return to council would be with a draft subdivision agreement for consideration.
Vice Deputy Mayor?
Just one last comment. I am going to support this, and it may not be enough votes to move this through, but it's support in principle. And what we're saying to the developers is that we're subject to resolution through condition of draft approval of outstanding issues relating to servicing, stormwater management, hydrogeology, geotechnical conditions, and noise. They know they have to provide that. They know they have to provide that. And I think we need to send a message back to the developers, which is a great plan, and Councillor Halpin said so. And I think Councillor Davinsky also said this is a great development, maybe not just yet. But I think we shouldn't be delaying this any further. And I think we need to be supporting in principle. So I will be supporting the resolution.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stack.
I'm shrinking suddenly. Just a couple of process questions, and I think I ask a similar question every time, but so for this, if we were to not approve the, effectively when we get down to the bylaw, we don't approve the bylaw and we say, no, we want to go back and have the conditions for draft approval met before we come back. Is it possible to just go right into the subdivision agreement? Like what I'm trying to understand is, are we actually materially delaying them by asking them to complete what we have already said we are going to require completion before we approve the final plan?
The planner.
Thank you for the question. So if this council this evening decided to defer the application, that would be a time delay for the applicant. So their amendment specifically would wait until a report is brought back to this council with more refinements potentially to the conditions of draft approval. And so that would be at least a month delay to bring that back to the next council meeting. Again, that would then push out the timeline with respect to a follow-up report to county council as well.
Councillor Stack.
It's probably more of a statement than a question, but I think, and I'm probably sounding like my mother, which is a different thing. Like you have to learn, you've managed to wait or the developers managed to wait from 2015 to today. So 11 years to bring this back. I think we've seen a lot of concerns from residents about some of the outstanding issues around the environmental assessments, drainage issues, all manner of issues that have been raised by several residents. So I am struggling. I'm struggling to approve this, not because just to be clear, not because I actually have a objection to the development itself. I think the rail trail discussion is very good. I ran that trail the other day. I thought, okay, this would be great to protect. I think there's a lot of opportunity for noise barriers. I think the development makes sense in the community, but I do think we should recognize that where folks have raised concerns, and I think, we all know when it comes to flooding and drainage, people get particularly concerned. And I know that there's been some concerns raised about the environmental assessment because there are some concerns about localized, I think the fuel, whatever that was underground, that there are some concerns there. The only reason I'm just being candid, is the only reason I'm not going to support this. I just think let's finish some of the more material issues out so that people can feel more comfortable that the town's completed its due diligence. And when you tell us that the reports have been submitted, I'm just struggling with why it's being brought to us without reviewing and finalizing the reports. Like the reports that the developer had to provide.
Planner.
Just as a follow-up to that point, and I believe another member of council had raised a question about delays in the process. So with the most recent large resubmission for this application to address comments from the county, town, and other agencies, the applicant had indicated in their response matrix that they had provided certain studies with that submission, which in fact they were not provided and had not been finalized. So there was a delay there, and that is why we also had recommended that some of those reports, including the hydrogeological assessment, be moved forward with conditions of draft approval.
Councillor Halpin.
Sorry. So sorry, just so we're clear, because I'm hearing some commentary in the gallery here. So just so I'm clear, the developer did not submit a complete package in the original application. Is that what you're saying?
The planner.
Yes, thank you. So I haven't been part of all of those discussions, but my understanding was that there was material and information provided to address the comments that had been provided by agencies through the original round of comments, but it was not a full resubmission, which would include a finalized report.
Councillor Stack. Okay. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Is it possible that there's 3 recommendations there? Is it possible that the 3rd recommendation that we vote on that because I would accept this, that council support in principle, the county approval of the draft plan, 5E, et cetera. I won't read the whole thing, but we're approving it in principle, but we're just not passing the bylaw yet. And would that allow it to move forward? Or would you like me to read that for the record?
Do you have any comments to that, the planner?
Thank you for the question. So in response, we would be looking for the amendments to move forward before we would take a report to County Council on the subdivision, simply because we're looking to make sure the appropriate permissions are in place to facilitate that future land division.
Yeah, to be clear, you can't do the draft plan of subdivision without amending the zoning and the official plan, right? One has to follow the other. The counselor helping?
I'm gonna think for a second. Thank you.
Sure. And the deputy mayor.
I don't know how to ask for a deferral rather than a vote at this stage, but I really do think that there's key information that's missing. And as Councillor Stack said, you know, the due diligence aspect, I think we need to have complete confidence that we've received what we should receive when we're making decisions that potentially impact not just potential new residents of town or people buying a new house in town, moving around, but also existing neighborhoods and infrastructure under the ground. And I just, you know, even the in principle part, if some of the reports that come in have information that requires a real redirect or a rethinking or a redesign, you know, then what happens? Is it going to just be, oh, well, let's just work through this and figure it out? When, you know, we should have had that information up front. I'm concerned that any kind of cost element that the town is going to be involved with, because we are often involved with development proposals with some taxpayer funded aspects. In the absence of complete information and a really defined sense of stormwater management and other technical things with infrastructure, there's potential there for things to come up that, you know, if we just waited and got the information up front so that there was a clear understanding, I think that that would be very helpful to our staff, but also be good messaging to the community that everything's been thought about, everything's been considered, everything's been reviewed, everything's been questioned, and then a decision was rendered. I just think there's a lot of information still missing. So I will not be supporting the way that the motion was worded up front. I think the development, you know, has some good points in that it's a continuation of something from a number of years ago and makes sense because it's, you know, there's existing infrastructure there. There were roads planned through that area, albeit there's been some adjustments there. So the development itself is quite possibly a very good idea, but I just don't think that we have what we need to ensure that the town is in good shape in terms of taxpayer funded expenses, but also just in terms of our own long-term plan with the way we manage services in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, you asked how you could proceed with a deferral, and a motion to defer is how you would do that. So I would entertain that at any time if that's what council wish to do. Although I would say if council wished to do that, I would specifically set out what things you're deferring, what you're waiting for. I assume this hydrogeological assessment, or sorry, pardon me, the geotechnical investigation report would be one of those things. I don't know what else, but I would say in fairness to the applicant, if you're doing a deferral, then you should identify what information you're looking for to have brought back in order for council to have what it thinks it needs to make a decision on this. Is there further discussion? Councillor Stack.
I don't know if this is a point of order, but we do have, I believe, the proponent in the room who keeps making comments. Can we hear from him rather than having this?
No, we can't hear from members of the public. We're not in the public meeting setting at this time. We can talk to the planner. You can ask questions of the planner, the deputy mayor. Order, come to order, please. Come to order. It's not a public meeting. We're going to proceed in normal process. We can talk to the planner if we want. Well, I'm sorry about that, but that isn't the case. The deputy mayor?
I'm doing this on the fly, so I might miss something, so I'll, hope that a colleague, if they notice that I missed something, but I would move that, this item be deferred pending, there's comments in the report pending, stormwater considerations being fully addressed to the satisfaction of the town, that a concerns regarding the absence of a hydrogeological assessment be addressed to the satisfaction of the town, that complete information regarding the situation with peat and its removal be provided, and the submission of a geotechnical investigation and report be submitted. Also, there was one more here. The submission of a final phase 2 environmental site assessment be provided to the satisfaction of the town of Saugeen Shores. I'm sure I missed a couple, but those were the ones that were very specifically mentioned in the planning report as being of concern to the town and not being completely addressed.
All right, well, that's, you have that, the clerk, you have that recorded? All right, it's moved by the deputy mayor. Is there a seconder for the deferral at this stage? Seconded by Councillor Dominski. We'll wait for the language here. So I have a resolution. This is it, the council defer consideration of. Oh, I have to refresh, sorry. No. Okay, so here, that's it. So the resolution moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Davinsky, is the council defer consideration of draft plan of subdivision application S-2025-004, local official plan amendment application L-2025-016, and zoning bylaw amendment application Z-2025-027, SKG Holdings / Chantry Crossing, and direct that the following information be submitted and reviewed to the satisfaction of the town prior to the applications being brought back to council. Stormwater management considerations and supporting information, a hydrogeological assessment, complete information regarding the peat, including its proposed removal, a geotechnical submission and supporting report, and a phase 3 environmental site assessment. Discussion, the deputy mayor and then Councillor Stack and then Councillor Mayette.
You did say stormwater management there up front? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Stack and then Councillor Mayette.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. So I'm sure I'm just slow today. So some of the items that the deputy mayor indicated is basis for deferral. Can the planner just confirm those have the final versions of those have been submitted to the town or have not been submitted?
The planner.
Yes, so for some of those reports, for example, the stormwater management report, there is a preliminary stormwater management report. There are town staff comments on that, but it is typical through the draft plan of subdivision process that a final report would be prepared as a condition of approval. So that would be an example where it's fairly standard to have a final stormwater management report submitted at a detailed design stage. The hydrogeological report, town staff, as well as the phase 2, and I just wanted to clarify in the deferral, it's a phase 2 report instead of phase 3. That report, my understanding, is ready to be submitted by the proponent, but would still need to be reviewed by town staff. So we have included it as well as a condition of approval. So all of the items, I believe that 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 have been noted in the deferral request are included as conditions of draft approval. Should council opt not to defer the application and instead endorse the draft plan of subdivision in principle.
Councillor Stack.
So just to maybe a discussion around the amendment, if the standard, sort of the drainage items are pretty standard to come in through the next phase, I'm a bit more reticent to include in our condition, like our deferral, things that are pretty standard. I think where I would say is, can we further narrow the scope so we're not unduly delaying this? So I think the hydrogeology would be the issue that concerns me the most, just for discussion.
Any comments for clarification on any of that? Are there items here, clarify for us, are there items here that are that we would normally have at this stage of the process that we don't have? Items that have been listed. I mean, I think that's what council is coming down to here. There's a question about what should we have normally when council's making a decision at this moment that we don't have, if anything. And which of these things would we normally only be considering after approval and as a condition? Can you clarify that for us, the planner?
Yes, thank you. So there are often situations where we do have the necessary reports. So for example, the applicant has made a resubmission. There are comments, for example, from the consulting engineer doing peer review on behalf of the town, where there are outstanding issues that are still to be resolved. And so we've had, through the county planner, a recommendation that those matters could be addressed through the preparation of a final report, which is how we've had it worded in the conditions. So we are comfortable providing the recommendation to council today that these matters can be addressed through final reports to be submitted through the conditions of draft approval. And so I use the example of stormwater management. That is a typical, at the start of the process, we do get a preliminary report, and then as a condition of approval, there is a final report. Now, stormwater conditions on this site, I would say, are maybe town staff have expressed a concern with how infrastructure is going to handle that stormwater and where that stormwater is going, and ensuring that it has properly taken into account existing development that's already there, things like that. And so there are issues that are still to be resolved, but they can be provided through a final report and a condition of approval. I would note that if council does decide to defer the applications this evening, the applicant has been in a position that they are able to appeal the applications for non-decision. They are already in that position. And so I'll just flag that would be a potential risk to the applications if they are deferred.
Okay, Councillor Halpin. Sorry, pardon me, Councillor Mayette and then Halpin. Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I don't see myself supporting the deferral, backed up by the last comment that I just heard, but it seems to me that the developer, and I'm getting that impression somewhere, that the developer has submitted all of the required documentation and all the reports and the studies that are required, and that they are at some stage of being reviewed and approved and peer reviewed by town staff or consultants. And I don't see that we wouldn't be able to satisfy the requirements of the bylaw when we get the final approval. And if some of these aren't done to our satisfaction at that time, council will have the ability to not approve the final draft subdivision. But there are, the process as it's been laid out is one that we've seen before with draft plan of subdivisions, where some of the reviews haven't been maybe totally complete, but, and especially backed up by the fact that this was an approved subdivision previously. So a lot of those things would have had to have been done 20 years ago when this was approved the first time. So I'm confident that the developer has completed all the steps that he needs to do. And it's just a matter of the staff and the developer reviewing and getting their I's dotted and T's crossed in order for this to proceed to the county level. And then finally, it will come back here. And at that point, we will be insistent, or whoever's sitting here will be insistent that everything is complete, everything's final, everything is done to the satisfaction of the town. So I won't be supporting the deferral, and I will be supporting the original motion, which is to approve the draft plan of subdivision. Thank you.
I just want to clarify the process there because, so plans of subdivision receive final approval at the county level, right? They don't come back to the town. So it'll go from here because they're the approval authority for a plan of subdivision that the county council is. So, this is the last decision that this council will make. Everything from this point forward, assuming we do this, we're recommending in principle that the county approval authority approve the draft plan of subdivision. County council won't even take up a plan of subdivision without such a motion having been passed by the lower tier council. But they are the decision maker. From this point forward, implementation will fall to staff. So at that point, enforcement of the draft the conditions that are now in draft, or the conditions of draft approval, will be undertaken by town staff primarily, just for clarity about how this all goes. Okay, is that clear enough?
Yeah, I think it is clear, but when it gets to county council, does county council give it the same level of scrutiny that we apparently are here today? Or do they kind of take our word for it that if the town's passed it, it must be okay?
Well, my experience, county councilors are diligent about their work, but they also do pay close attention to the recommendations of lower tier councils with respect to things happening in their municipalities, give a great deal of deference generally to lower tier councils unless there's some kind of very obvious problem. The councillor Help and the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I'm not supportive of the length of the list of reasons for deferment. There's only one thing that I'm concerned about, and that's the stormwater management plan. And perhaps I shouldn't be, but so what does it look like if it comes back to us that it's that line that scares me so much about the downstream infrastructure required? What happens, or what's the likelihood of that happening? That's the only thing that I'm really uncomfortable with, because it just seems so open-ended, like if there is. So what does it look like if they say, oh, well, we've got to do, we have to do upgrades to drain 12. Like, what does that look like, or what happens then?
The planner?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So if the draft plan of subdivision were to be approved with the conditions before you today, the applicant would then start working towards addressing those conditions. So for example, to address the stormwater management, they would need to provide a final stormwater management report. And within that report, it would provide recommendations that are required to implement their plan. If that report was not to the satisfaction of town staff and its consulting engineer, then town staff would not be able to write what we refer to as a clearance letter. So any agency and the municipality who are listed as clearance agencies in the conditions of draft approval are required to submit a letter to the county indicating how the conditions have been addressed, and if they're satisfied, that final approval can be given. If for some reason stormwater couldn't be addressed, there was not an appropriate resolution, then there would be no clearance letter from the municipality, and the county would not be able to recommend final approval, in which case the applicant would not be able to create the lots. However, they would still have the designations and the zoning in place, so they could come back and submit another application at another time.
Okay, thank you. So this would be the last time that this comes before council, but it's not the last time that it receives the scrutiny of the town of Saugeen Shores. Is that a correct statement to say?
Yes, thank you. That is correct. The detailed design is where you get into the very detailed engineering drawings and submissions and resolving any outstanding comments or concerns that had been provided by town staff, their engineer, and the applicable agencies.
Councillor Helbin?
Thank you. Is this list of things that need to be finished up? That's what kind of scared me away. Is this list bigger than a lot of lists or like, is it common to have this many things that we're waiting for the final on?
The planner?
I don't know if I can necessarily answer that question. Each file is different and dependent on the site conditions and the issues that are being brought forward.
Yep, Councillor Helpin.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and last one. I won't support the deferment as it stands. Thank you.
Okay, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Halpin, for that. I was making it up on the fly. In the report that we received, there is an indication in there about related to stormwater management and master servicing and that sort of thing, that the plans that exist didn't take into account this project specifically, that it's a little bit different. I really don't think that, the information that the planner just provided about how there's the potential for an appeal and that, that time limit has passed, that wasn't in anything that we received. So I'm a little bit concerned that that's just gets dropped into the conversation. It seems a little bit desperate in some ways. And I would hope that any developer hoping to have a good project in our community respects public input and councillor input enough to recognize that, ultimately we want what's good for the community. They, I think, want what's good for the community too and expect to make a little bit of profit from it or a lot of profit as the case may be. But I would like to believe that a developer would not put the threat over anybody on council or planning staff that, well, I'll just take this out on appeal. So that took me by surprise when that was said, because I do think that there's some merit to the whole project. I really think that there's some fundamental information missing from what we're seeing before us. This is the last time we're going to see this. And ultimately, our staff then have to quote unquote figure it out. Sometimes I think we should be providing them with a little more substantial information or support or a decision that then gives them the impetus or the confidence to follow through with some things. There's an awful lot of unanswered questions. And when an engineering firm, Burnside, that we hired to provide us with advice, when their report tells us that this is missing, that they can't comment on this because there's not enough information, I think we should take that seriously. I respect what the planner said, though, about, that it's typical that there are some things that aren't completely finished. However, there's an awful lot that was mentioned to us as not being finished. So if it would, be helpful, even just getting the deferral on the basis of stormwater management, that would be okay with me too. But I just think that there are enough unanswered questions here that a slight pause to enable some of these reviews to take place, to have some questions answered, will give our staff the ability to better represent the town's interests in the process, and that they won't have to figure it out, that there will be some information before them that they can then make good decisions using that information as well. So I don't think we should be afraid of that the timeline is passed on going for an appeal. I would like to believe that a developer who's been listening, and I think has obviously listened because there have been some adjustments made, that they have an interest in respecting the community enough to take a little interruption, I guess, in the process, to have a slight delay, to get some other information before the people that it matters, to have us receive information that should matter to us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if there's a way that I can shorten the request to defer down to just the stormwater management situation, I will do that in respect of what Councillor Halpin has said.
You're the mover, so you can do that as long as the seconder agrees.
Well, then I will do that.
All right, so that's just an amendment made by the mover and seconder to the motion on the floor, and we'll get the Vice Deputy Mayor.
I'll try to be brief. I don't think anyone's saying we're not respecting public input. I think we had a really, really good public meeting here, and the room was full, and lots was said, and I think the developers have gone back and made some very positive changes to this development. So I don't think anyone's saying we're not respecting public input. I think we've really respected public input. I think they have listened. So I think they've done some good things with adjusting the development. The arguments presented tonight, I'm wondering, and I kind of agree with that statement with the Interior Land Tribunal. I'm not sure this will stand up to the test of time with the arguments being made. But, I think the planner, Karina, I think you've done a really good job as the planner with this recommendation. And, I go right back to, I won't be supporting the deferral, but I go right back to the council support in principle, subject to resolution through condition of draft approval of outstanding issues. And I agree with Councilor Mayor, everything you said, subject to resolution through conditions of draft approval. So I think I've done a really good job with the report. I think there's room to make sure the developer gets to the county, to the town, what we're requesting. And so I just think we're delaying. We don't need to delay. I really, so I won't be supporting the deferral. We'll be supporting the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Stack?
I hate admitting this, but I think I might be changing my mind on the fly. And I think the reason is, so when we did the Market Street vote almost 4 years ago, we ended up in front of the Land Tribunal. We were unsuccessful. And I think what just caused me a bit of consternation and why I'm pausing on my original position is, that comment that has been made, and now we've sort of articulated potential legal positions about the strength of our argument on the public record, which is not putting us in a great spot. So I think on that basis, I'm going to take a fairly risk-informed decision and say, I think we will have to follow the process, which does not suggest that they are not without obligation to comply with the final conditions. And I think the one question I had is, going back to sort of the drainage issue, if they are unable to demonstrate that they can, address the drainage concerns appropriately, is that the basis upon which the county can, according to the Planning Act, deny the final plan of subdivision?
Planner?
Sorry, could you just ask that question again, please?
So if in the end, the developer does not meet the drainage conditions such that the existing infrastructure can't support it or whatever, they can't address the issues raised in the report before us. And so the town can't provide the clearance letter, and that goes to the county. The lack of a clearance letter, can someone confirm to me that that's a legal basis upon which the county can decline a subdivision approval?
The planner.
Yes, through you. So if we don't get the required clearance agency letters, then we would not be recommending final approval of the application.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stack.
Sorry, I'm going to be just a bit persnickety. The Planning Act entitles the county to say no when the conditions are not met.
The planner.
Yes, that's correct.
Could I just clarify that though? Because to be clear, like what happens is the draft plan of subdivision goes to county council. County council approves the draft plan with the conditions. Then the applicant does the work, and then their business isn't with the county anymore. It's with the town. Like in terms of clearing those conditions, at least the ones that are subject are overseen by the town, right? So it's not, just to be clear, like it's not as like, I think Councillor Stack was asking, and maybe I'm not saying what you were saying, Councillor Stack, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that somehow that these clearance letters would impact decision-making by county council, but that isn't the case because all of that happens after approval by the county approval authority, and then the implementation of the conditions happens downstream from there in a staff to applicant basis. Am I right about that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Charbonneau. So for final approval, the county does provide sign off or a clearance that would allow the applicant to create the lots. So if we don't get that final clearance letter from the town or other agencies listed in the conditions, which would include a final agreement being entered into between the proponent and the town, then we could potentially bring that back to county council. Right now, that is a delegated staff exercise for final approval.
Just to be clear, though, that happens after county council approved the draft plan, and it happens at the staff level, at the county staff level and the town staff level, unless there's some major problem. Sorry, Councillor Stack.
Yeah, so that generally aligns with what I think I heard the first time. When you say we could direct it back to county council rather than staff, is that is that what I heard?
The planner.
Yes, I'll have to look that up because I quite honestly haven't been through that situation before, but that is my understanding, is that if it wasn't able to be resolved at the staff level, then we would bring that back to county council.
Okay. Councillor Dubinsky, sorry, Councillor Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just a couple of clarifications here. So the deputy mayor said, and I've seconded, that we defer the drainage issue. If that doesn't pass, does that mean approval in principle passes, or do we have to have a vote on that?
No, your council is currently considering a motion to defer the entire application pending further information on the stormwater management question. Should that pass, it will be deferred. Should it fail, then we'll go back to considering the main question. Is that clear enough, Councillor Dubinsky?
Yeah, just hold on for a second. Yes, I'm fine.
All right. Is there any further comments or questions before we consider the deferral? I just wanted to comment. I think no, I'm kind of lost. I've lost my train of thought. I'm thinking about too many things. I think the question to me comes down to in this draft plan of subdivision, there's I don't know. I guess I'm lost. I'm trying to think, trying to get to where my mind was at, but now I've forgotten. Sorry about that. Yeah, I guess that's the question. Like condition 12 in here, what happens if the recommendation can't be carried out without changing the plan? I mean, that's what it comes down to for me, right? So if we get these hydrogeological or geotechnical investigation, stormwater management studies, and we find at some point downstream, pardon the pun, that this thing isn't going to work the way it's laid out, the way the subdivision is designed, the way it's been approved. What happens at that point? I guess at that point, the applicant, the developer, has to come back and make revisions to this plan, right? Like that's where we're at. That's good to me. Like it's a little confusing because we have this plan in front of us. It's contingent on some information that we don't yet have. That's not wholly unusual, but there are some things about this that may be a little different from what we've seen before. If that were to happen and those contingencies arose and changes had to be made to what we're considering approving tonight, what would happen then? Would it be then on town staff or county staff to make changes, or does it come back to council to change the plan? The planner?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Charbonneau, for the question. So if through detailed design, so if the draft plan of subdivision was draft approved by the county and the applicant needed to make some adjustments to the lot lines or the blocks, for example, then that would be a revision to the draft plan of subdivision. So it would be dependent on the extent of the proposed changes. So there are two streams. One is a major revision, which would come back to town council. And then there are minor revisions, so minor adjustments to lot lines and things like that, which is a staff level recommendation.
So I guess that's the point for me, like, as long as it's understood by the applicant, by the community, by council, that, you know, if the work that is yet to be done identifies issues that cannot be resolved within the context of this plan, then the applicant is going to have to come back and go through this process all over again to revise this plan. It seems risky to me for the applicant to, hopefully they understand that and have a solid enough understanding based on the information in hand that that won't be the case, but it is a bit of a risk that exists, and that has to be understood by everyone. And I assume that it is. I guess that's a fair enough description of everybody's understanding, the planner.
Yes, that would be typical. In the case of detailed design where there are changes, then there would need to be a revision to the draft plan of subdivision. And again, dependent on the scope of the changes, it would be a major or a minor revision and potentially would trigger further amendments as well. So it may come back to town council for a zoning bylaw amendment if, you know, setbacks or something were impacted because of this realignment of boundaries.
And I think also it needs to be made clear that, you know, as Councillor Halpin pointed out in condition 13, the final sentence there, cost to design and construct improvements to the downstream storm drainage, it is at this point, at least not totally and completely understood what that might look like. So it has to be understood today by council, by the applicant, that that could be a very costly project. We don't necessarily exactly know what it will look like. And to be clear, like the town of Saugeen Shores is not going to absorb any of that cost. And it's going to be firm in its negotiating position on that, right? So I think, again, although we don't fully understand necessarily sitting here today what that will look like, it's required in here, and the town is going to be firm in holding the line and requiring those items. I suppose that's just a statement that I'm making, but these are some of the things it's an unusual situation we're in because we have a bit of a split brain here between our county planner and the position of the town. And that's why we're struggling a bit here, because we've read from the town some concern and the planners are recommending approval. And that's why council is trying to mediate between those two positions and find the right spot. And I think it just has to be clear, like the town's concerns are legitimate concerns. I'm not sure their concerns are with the overall development, but they are with the potential challenges that come with having to do this, with making this approval without some of the information that they feel they need. So I think we're protected in this draft, in these conditions of draft approval, but it has to be understood by all that the town is going to is going to uphold these conditions, and if the worst happens and some of these things we don't know yet turn out to require major changes to this plan of subdivision, then it's just not going to get those sign-offs, and it's going to have to come back here to get changed. So that has to be well understood. All right, those are my comments. Do you have a comment? Yeah, the director.
Yeah, just a brief comment, just in terms of, and I know in terms of the deferral motion, in terms of stormwater management plan, but hydrogeological studies, geotechnical studies are often required to complete the stormwater management plan. So I would suggest in terms of if you're moving forward with that motion, that you incorporate hydrogeological and the geotechnical to inform the stormwater management plan, if that's clear.
Okay, yeah, the deputy mayor and Councilor Davinsky agree to that. Okay. I'll reread it once the clerk has updated it.
What were the two things?
Hydrogeological and geotechnical.
Let me just get or do you have something? Is it specific to the revisions the clerk is making to the motion, the deputy mayor?
Should the motion fail, if are all of these reports that are indicated as, the owner, that the owner submit this, that the owner submit that, that the owner do this, will all of those reports eventually show up on the public information that is available about this application? Will that all be updated as those things are received?
The planner?
Thank you for the question. So if the reports are submitted before the county takes a report to county council for a decision on the subdivision, then they will be posted online. But after a decision is rendered on an application, we typically remove all of the materials from the website. So anything that is submitted should the subdivision be approved, anything that is submitted in response to conditions of approval would not be posted on the website.
Okay, we're going to consider this motion to defer now. Just is the wording together there? I don't know why I may have to read it off here as I'm not seeing it there. All right. So one more time, this is the motion to defer then. The council defer consideration of draft plan of subdivision application S 2025-004, local official plan amendment L-2025-016, and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-027, SKG Holdings, and direct that the following information be submitted and reviewed to the satisfaction of the town prior to the applications being brought back to council. Hydrogeological and geotechnical studies to inform the stormwater management considerations and supporting information. It has been moved and seconded. So I'll ask, all in favor? And opposed? That's defeated. All right, so now we're back to the main question. And the main question is already moved and seconded by Halpin and Mayette. Any further questions or comments to the resolution? I might, go ahead, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. My big concern was about just the amount of things that are left. And my other big concern was, what safeguard does the town have? And after listening, that if this doesn't come back, as the mayor said, our staff will be diligent if this stuff doesn't come back, and that can stop it. Okay, so it's not like if we advance this that we've given up any safeguards. We haven't said that we're not going to enforce the letter of the law and make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed and everything is met. So there's just a lot of them on the list though for me this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. For the further comments? I might just comment that I think it's a good development a location that has been planned to be developed for a very long time. And they've made some adjustments here. It's a good opportunity for us to get municipal ownership over the rail trail there, which I think is a very positive thing. And they've made some adjustments to make the development make a little more sense, I think, than it did the last time it was draft plan approved. So I think it works a little better and completes this long planned area of Southampton. So I think it'll be a good development. And as Councillor Halpin noted, I don't think, although council and the town have sort of just spent an hour and a half struggling about some of the questions here, I really think it comes down to the risk. It's the applicant who's taking the risk here, not the municipality. The applicant wants to advance this, wants it here today. It's here today. The unanswered questions, they have to answer them. And if they aren't answered to the satisfaction of the subdivision agreement, the subdivision can't go ahead. And so it's really more their risk than ours, in my view. But I wish them the best because I hope the development proceeds in accordance with all these rules, because I think it'll be a good development. So if there's nothing further, then all in favor and opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right. So now we're on to item 7. Oh, sorry about that. Yes, get Councillor Grace back. Okay, now we're on to item 7.2, Community Improvement Plan Development Charges Review, and we'll turn that over to our Planning Policy Coordinator.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. To provide a brief background on this file, an initial public meeting was held on May 19th, 2026, where the draft supplementary housing CIP update was presented and discussed. Following this, at the June 8th, 2026 council meeting, a draft update to the DC bylaw was considered. At that time, direction was given to remove all discretionary exemptions from the town's DC bylaw and to incorporate those exemptions into the CIP. Following this direction, a review of the existing incentive programs was conducted by Sierra Planning and Management. The intention of this staff report, the consultant's memo, and presentation attached is to provide an update on the scope and rationale of the planned changes to the community improvement plan prior to further draft amendments being prepared. We have consultants online from Sierra Planning and Management, Jonathan Hack and Lindsay Cudmore, and I'll now turn it over to Lindsay online to walk through the incentives review in more detail.
Great, thank you, Jordan. Good evening, Mayor Charbonneau and members of council. Tonight I'll provide a high-level overview of the Community Improvement Plan review being undertaken in response to the town's new development charge bylaw. The purpose of today's presentation is really to summarize what has changed, identify where potential incentive gaps may exist, and to outline areas that we believe warrant further consideration through the CIP review process. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the review, the new development charge bylaw removed several discretionary exemptions that lowered development costs for certain types of projects. Subsequently, council directed staff to review whether the CIP should respond to these exemptions that were lost. And our review really identifies what's already covered elsewhere and where some of the gaps exist. Gaps remain. A key outcome of our review is that the focus has we've been able to narrow it to industrial and commercial core development specifically. I can go through the next few slides, sort of detail that a bit more. But just a note on this slide here, we wanted to reiterate that any future incentives provided through new or modified CIP programs will have an obligation, require a municipal funding commitment to be able to fund them. Next slide, please. So what's changed? So in a bit more detail here, on the left, we're providing the exemptions that were in the former DC bylaw, and detailing how it's covered now. So most housing-related exemptions continue to receive support either through the Development Charges Act with the exemptions and reductions in place there, as well as through the proposed HAF programs that we've developed that were brought at the May 19th council meeting. Vacant building redevelopment exemption remains in the DC bylaw with a few language changes. Industrial development no longer has broad relief beyond the legislative expansion provisions, although there are incentives offered for innovation parks specifically. Commercial core, meaning non-residential and mixed-use projects specifically, no longer have equivalent relief as part of the new DC bylaw. And so there's two key gaps there, industrial and commercial core development. Next slide, please. So just looking at the housing exemptions in a little bit more detail, we just wanted to sort of remind everyone about what is being provided in the half-funded proposed programs that have been developed. So the table on this slide really demonstrates why housing is not part of our review going forward. We're not considering any additional exemptions related to housing in the CIP amendment. Because affordable housing, additional residential units, and rental housing, purpose-built rental housing, continue to benefit from DC provisions, whether it's full exemptions or discounts, reductions. And then the proposed HAF programs provide additional support on top of the DC provisions. Therefore, we're recommending there's no short-term replacement incentives required for housing-related incentives. And just to note that the HAF funding currently extends to December 4th, 2028. So just sort of in the short term, we're not considering that for inclusion. Next slide, please. So potential gaps. So just to sort of summarize the key conclusions of our review that were provided in a bit more detail in the attached memo as well. One of the key gaps we note is industrial development outside of that in occurring or potential to occur in an innovation park. So the other existing employment lands that exist within the town, while we understand they may be fairly built out, there's opportunity for redevelopment, reinvestment, expansion, and that type of thing, as well as commercial core development being the second gap. So both loss review through the new CIP or the new DC bylaw that was put into place and approved. And there's no equivalent support provided through the Development Charges Act or HAF funding, which is housing focused. So the review will really focus, less about housing, more about economic development downtown as well as in the employment areas. And future options that we're considering are, potentially to include a multi-stream DC grant program that already exists in the CIP, but just sort of fleshing that out a bit more, potentially by sector or location oriented. We'll also take a look at whether there's any merits of detailing a bit more the tax increment equivalent grant that is also provided for within the existing CIP. And having looked at what remains covered elsewhere, the review really comes down to those two areas that no longer have coverage where council may wish to consider a CIP response in that regard. Next slide, please. So again, today's update is really intended to establish the direction for the amendment process. Based on council's feedback today, our next step will be to prepare the draft amendment for consideration and then bring that forward through the statutory public meeting process in September. And at that point, it being a public meeting, council will have the opportunity to review the proposed programs, their structure, and any associated funding implications that may be required before making any decisions. So that concludes my presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a resolution the council received the Community Improvement Plan Development Charges Review Update Report for information. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Mayette. Discussion. We'll start with Halpin and then come to Grace.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Just for the general public in that, could we define commercial core, non-residential, and mixed-use development? Would that like be downtown stores or what exactly would that involve?
Consultant?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, commercial core. So that's based on the official plan designation, but within that, it really focuses on commercial. So, I mean, non-residential, it's ultimately commercial, whether it's, existing commercial there's, new commercial sites that potentially could be developed. It's basically commercial is what the reference is there. The mixed use reference would ultimately be commercial at ground floor with residential above. However, the incentives that we'd be looking at would focus on the commercial component of that development.
So if I could, Mayor, I do support DC breaks for this. I think it's important for us to support our downtowns and to do anything we can to make it easier for them to develop. But I do have a question. If a vacant building is being redeveloped, Do they have to pay any DC charges? Like, let's say a storefront that's been empty for several years or something, and now they want to redevelop it. Do things like that have to pay a DC charge?
The consultant?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The the new DC bylaw maintains the exemption that was in place previously for vacant buildings for redevelopment. I believe maybe someone from the town could clarify what the language change was, but from what I understand, it was just sort of a little bit more, provided some additional structure to what those requirements might be.
I'll just clarify that DCs would be owed on commercial development that represents additional square footage or expansion. So it's only that component that would trigger DC charges.
The counselor?
Thank you all. Okay, I'm sorry, one more question. For the vacant building, how long does a vacant building have to be empty to qualify for anything like that?
The treasurer?
So again, I'll just speak specifically to when DCs are triggered, and a vacant building could be vacant for, I'm not sure that there's a time period on it. It would have more to do with if there's expanding footprint.
Thank you.
Okay, the deputy mayor?
I thought Councillor Grace was next.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Grace, I had my back turned to you and saw your hand. Councilor Grace?
It's okay. I've been out of the room for a while. Just to go to the vacant properties question, and one of the charts talks about the offering incentives for vacant building redevelopment, which I think is a great idea. And I know a number of residents continue to be frustrated by the fact that we have some vacant properties in our downtown area that appear not to respond to incentives or anything. And I don't know if what we could do to encourage the development of those properties or the willingness of those owners to develop their properties, but that's something I'd like to have happen either in this or some other means. You mentioned, Lindsay, that, and I had a question in particular that I submitted to staff about offering DC exemptions for properties in Innovation Park. And that we have a rubric that we use. I didn't see that specifically mentioned in the written report, but I know you've addressed it in your comments here. That's something that you're recommending that we continue?
The consultant?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that is something that we will be taking into consideration. The town has developed and approved a scoring matrix for Innovation Park specifically. So we can use that as a basis going forward, looking at potential for development charge reductions and how those might apply to other employment lands within the town. So yeah, incorporating that and making it clear that those exist under the existing DC or under the existing CIP, sorry, is something that we can address.
Councilor Grace?
And that would be based on this rubric of ultimately how much value we consider that industrial development to be for the community, right? I mean, could it range from like a 25% reduction to a perhaps 100% reduction?
The consultant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're going to look at all of that. So, yeah, the scoring that's in place at present is, based on the target sector and the type of sector that the business is in, how many employees it brings in, the construction costs, it's just sustainability considerations, all of that. If the town wishes to, maintain that type of scoring, then we can incorporate it, as well as look at, what it might mean for other, reinvestment in sites and that type of thing as well.
Councilor Grace?
Thank you. I have one more, and that is a question about the ARU, just an additional residential unit grant program. When I sent this question, the response was, my question was, can we include a design requirement in the Housing Accelerator funded CIP incentives? The reason that I included that is because we have had some 4-unit residential buildings going up that we, up until now, because of provincial site plan control regulations, don't allow us to exercise any kind of site plan control on units, on developments that have 10 or fewer residential dwellings within that. And as a result, we have ended up with a couple of developments that essentially look like small apartment buildings within an established residential area that they just don't fit. Is there a potential, would we have to get past a conflict with the provincial regulation, or are we able, do we have the power within this community improvement plan to be able to exercise our own design requirements?
Consultant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had discussed this as well, and about the town approved, pre-approved designs for ARUs. I believe you're referring to whether adding that as a stipulation or eligibility criteria, as it were. If your design follows these, the town approved designs, then you would be eligible for CIP funding. I'm not sure about the legislative requirements. Maybe I could ask John to weigh in on that, but I guess including it as, if they want the CIP funding from half for that type of unit, putting that stipulation would, I guess, would limit them to have to include that design, right?
Yeah, I can, if it's helpful, and I apologize for my situation. I'm sat in a car, but just joining in online. So just to add to what Lindsay has said, if I understand the question correctly, that can you put in additional design criteria for ARUs to make sure it works well and in the public interest? I think absolutely you can. If you cast your mind back to the half program funded CIP that we developed, we were fairly, I'd say, non-prescriptive. I know you have the guidelines for, the template designs, but we tried to reduce the level of prescription for further aspects, such as universal design, for example, because to do that, you may end up creating further limits to take up of the ARU program. And I recognize that those goals are laudable themselves, but our experience with CIPs is you can work with the applicant to move it in the direction that you want. CIPs are quite flexible in that way. I don't think you want to put in rigid rules about exactly those things, because it will have no doubt but to restrict the number of applications that you get. And at this point, when you have the funding ahead of you and only 2 years in which to spend it, I think, be a little bit less prescriptive, but prepared to engage with applicants using the the CIP as the tool. It's both a carrot and a stick in that regard. So I don't think it will be a problem. Certainly you can instruct staff that they should look for those issues. But one of the key metrics is to make sure you do get applications in. It's about creating supply and working with the developers to meet the needs. And if those needs involve universal design, as an example, and accessibility, then that's a goal that should be pursued.
Councilor Grace.
Thank you. I wasn't suggesting that for us to require that the applicants follow the exact designs that have been created, but to be consistent or complement the character, which we haven't fully defined, in my opinion, but the general character of what our town looks like. I think we have some guidelines on that are available. And I'm just thinking of, permanent constructions that now are wildly out of place in some residential areas. Unfortunately, they're there. And there's nothing we can do about it now. If there's some way we could, as you say, carrot and stick somehow, lead people to consider designs that are more complementary to retaining the character of our community. Thank you.
Okay. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just ask, I know somewhere in the report, it suggests that something's going to be before council September 21st, a public meeting surrounding a CIP review. Couple questions. Is the focus of the review on what's occurred? Because the report suggests that there's been no take up of CIP programs in recent years. So is the focus about that, or is it about, what we're expecting in the future? But beyond that, I'm just, the part that's about the commercial core, we've deferred a discussion about the CPPS, which is focused on the commercial core areas of both Port Elgin and Southampton, the former towns of Southampton and Port Elgin. It's very confusing. I think that there's this overlap always coming into play, and ultimately, have we realized anything? Have we got any affordable housing? Have we infilled any vacant lots? Have we, infilled someplace with a little more density? My reading of what was before us tonight would say that there's been no take up. What is the justification? And I understand, the funding element, but why are we even continuing with this? If in the 2 years it's kind of been around, because I think it's been 2 years, there's been no uptake. What are we going to see on the 21st that makes this an important thing to keep talking about and spending money on?
The Director.
Thanks, Mayor. I think at this point, in terms of having listened to the conversation, there's a lot of things here being tabled and good conversation. And at this point, my suggestion might be in terms of that we go back and revisit the scope of the work that was put forward. We're hearing a lot of good conversation in that, and I think we're getting into a lot of different areas. And I would suggest, maybe we need to go back and look at that direction that council provided. And unfortunately, I don't have it right here in front of me, but let's go back and look at the scope of that work.
The CAO has her hand up. The CAO.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to draw council's attention to the staff report that accompanied tonight's presentation, because it does outline the scope of work for council on this. So If council will remember, the community improvement plan that came forward in May was the Supplementary Housing Initiatives CIP. So again, the focus of that work is to enable the Housing Accelerator Fund grants to get out the door in order to support all the supplementary housing pieces that we're targeting to spend the half funding grant on. Council at that meeting also heard about the DC bylaw update. And so there was the recommendation that was passed that night is included in the staff report that council removed all the discretionary exemptions from the DC charges bylaw and asked staff to incorporate those discretionary exemptions into the CIP if it was possible. So I just want to table with council and support what the director was saying, that that's the scope of work that we're focused on right now. And we want to target bringing those supplementary housing initiatives back to council in a timely way. So that's why we're talking about September, and that we would look at where the DC exemption list could be included where it makes sense. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity about what we're trying to do. I just want to make sure we're not going down different areas related to community improvement plans. We're really targeted on that supplementary housing piece and then where any discretionary exemptions can fit into that amendment.
I think the discussion that council had at that time was when we were discussing removing all the discretionary exemptions from the development charges bylaw. We wanted to make sure that nothing important was missed, that we weren't removing something that wasn't already covered by provincial legislation that we also valued, right? So I think the purpose of this report is to understand that question, right? To look at what's picked up by provincial legislation and then what's left over. And then council can make the decision after that about whether we think those items which are left over, which appear to be on the question of industrial exemptions and on core commercial exemptions. From my reading, that's about all that, those are the pieces that are left unaddressed. And I guess council then can have the discussion, do we consider those important enough that we want to incorporate them into a CIP to carry them on outside of the development charges bylaw where they used to be picked up. So to me, that's what we're talking about here. Is that, does that conform with what staff's view of this discussion is? Just so that we're on the same page? Yes? Yeah, okay. Anyway, further discussion. I don't know, Deputy Mayor, were you finished? Okay, Councillor Halpin then.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. One cautionary note with this, like some of the stuff isn't being taken up, so it doesn't seem like it's going to cost us a lot of money, but we have foregone a lot of revenue with our DCs for purpose-built housing, and it worked. We doubled our supply. It wasn't this council, it was the previous council. They doubled the supply of rental units, but we sure have foregone a lot of DC charges over the 3 million worth over the last 4 or so years. So that's my one cautionary thing. Yet at the same time, I do want to support our downtowns as much as we can.
Thank you. Further comments? Yeah, I think, and when we discussed it, when we were discussing the development charges bylaw, and I proposed the notion of wiping all these discretionary exemptions out of the bylaw and considering them as part of a CIP, my feeling at that time was that what was left wouldn't be all that significant. And I think that that's the case still. I think we need to clarify, make sure that we are covering off the work we're trying to do in places like Innovation Park, make sure that we can adequately implement DC relief in accordance with the rubric that Councillor Grace laid out, was discussing. We need to be able to continue to do that. So we have to have that. We have to have the policy framework in place, either through a CIP or some other policy, to be able to continue with that. That's critical, I think. And, you know, the downtown core commercial program could be important, but I would be interested to understand a little more clearly what exactly we were trying to achieve in the core commercial areas, because the core commercial areas are essentially developed for the most part, right? So what are we trying to encourage in the core commercial areas? I understand this notion of moving vacant commercial spaces out of vacancy into some kind of occupancy, but we've tried lots of things to incentivize that in the past without much success, because in the final analysis, it's none of these charges are the deciding factor in that. The deciding factor is some private interest, the inability to lease or the unwillingness to lease, and all of that comes down to private financial considerations and generally isn't driven by development charges or taxation, right? Like that's not what an owner is thinking about when they're deciding how to use that property, right? So we have to be realistic about how much we can influence that kind of decision with this kind of move. I think we have a much more effect, as Councillor Halpin pointed out, in the housing realm, because the decision making around building housing is driven to a much greater extent by those DC charges, which can amount to a fair bit of money. So anyway, I guess all of that to say is I'm kind of satisfied with where we are at the moment, apart from making sure that we have the exemptions in place or the capacity to implement a program to incentivize industrial development in places like Innovation Park. I think that's a piece we need to have, so we should pursue that. But that's really all that's left from my perspective of great importance at this point. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. This Spruce the Bruce offers incentives for our commercial core as well, right? Through the county, there's a program where commercial core stores and that can apply for funding and grants for sprucing up their storefronts. Is that correct?
That's right. But it's important to remember that the CIP is what makes that program possible, right? Municipalities can't bonus private interests without a mechanism like a community improvement plan to make it possible. So Spruce the Bruce rests on the municipality having a community improvement plan to implement it. Yeah, Councillor Halpin.
So thank you, Mayor. So does that mean like if we don't have a CIP for a community improvement plan for downtown, we can no longer take part of in Spruce the Bruce as well?
Well, that's a good point. I guess if it would target it at the downtown, we would have to have a program in the CIP that would cover off the incentives. I can turn that over to the consultant. They'll be greater experts on that than me. What say you to that?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'll answer that through you, Your Worship. Yes, exactly. You obviously counties are upper tier authorities. They are not permitted to undertake community improvement plans. What they can do and what the county does is has a stated policy of matching essentially the funding that is in lower tier CIPs. And that's where the Spruce to Bruce campaign is targeted. So to the extent you want to use those funds, you have to have a program that allows the municipality to essentially work with the upper tier offer of funding. So yes, you need to keep a program in place.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well made, Councillor Halpin. That's an important thing for us to consider. We want, obviously, our residents, our business owners to be able to access Spruce to Bruce. So staff should pay careful attention to make sure that our CIP enables us to access all of those programs. I would note too, though, I think the province just changed the rules around upper tier CIPs. I think the upper tier can now implement a CIP. Hard to keep up with all the province's changes, though. Are there further discussions on this? If not, it's been moved and seconded. It's just to receive for information. All in favor? That is carried. Okay. So now we're on to 7.3, comments on proposed governance regulations for regional conservation authorities and the manager of planning and development.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. The Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks is seeking feedback on proposed regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act that would establish governance requirements for Ontario's future regional conservation authorities and the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. The proposed Lake Huron Conservation Authority would encompass a significantly larger geographic area than the current Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, including the town of Saugeen Shores and all of Bruce County. Under the proposed regulations, Bruce County would appoint one member to the proposed Lake Huron Regional Conservation Authority Board, and Saugeen Shores would no longer have direct representation. The staff report in front of you is broken down into the themes of representation and appointments, alternative governance arrangements, maintaining local municipal input, and the Ontario Provincial Conservation Authority Board eligibility. Within each theme, an analysis of the proposed change is outlined, along with a context specific to Saugeen Shores. A number of comments to be forwarded to the province through the Environmental Registry of Ontario are included in the report, and I'm happy to take any questions from council.
Thank you. The resolution is the council endorse the comments in this report, directing staff to forward them to the province through the Environmental Registry of Ontario, and that council directs staff to provide a copy to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, Bruce County Council, and the lower tier municipalities within Bruce County for consideration. Is there a mover and seconder? Councilor Mayette, Councilor Halpin. Discussion, Councilor Mayette.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. The report that came out from the provincial government on the structure of the new conservation authority and the regional conservation authorities is really manifesting exactly what we were afraid was going to happen, is that these larger conservation authorities by population, such as in our case, York region and Lake Simcoe region, are just going to dominate the boards, the conservation authority boards. And like I said, we'll have one representative for Bruce County. And not only will we only have one, but it stipulates that that one representative cannot be a former member of the Conservation Authority. So they want to have minimal representation, and they want to make sure that that representation has no previous knowledge of how conservation authorities work. So they want a greenhorn in there that they can manipulate. And then it goes nowhere to address the assets that the different conservation authorities have. Like Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has significant assets, not just liquid assets, but land assets. They own thousands of acres of land, conservation parks, Saugeen Bluffs Conservation, Dairydale Conservation. There's lots of parks and things that they manage that they're bringing to the table, and they'll have one vote as to how those assets get consolidated or amalgamated or liquidated, or however that it goes. Our citizens of Bruce County are going to be very poorly represented. And that goes for not just Bruce County, but all of the Great County and Huron County that are currently members of the Saugeen Valley Conservation Board. This is, like I said, it's just coming true what we were totally afraid what was going to happen. And as was just recently pointed out by the mayor, the changes are coming so fast from this government, it's hard to keep up. And this is just one more heavy-handed, in my opinion, to, they promised they were going to reduce red tape for developers. Well, this is taking out a whole level of scrutiny that they're going to have to go through. So it's really a shame. And so I endorse the comments from the town. The Conservation Authority has their own sets of comments that they're feeding back on this. And I believe that everybody should read those too. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
I just wanted to clarify your one comment with respect to current or former authority members being appointed. That's to the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency Board, not to the Regional Conservation Authority, right? So because what the government's trying to do there is create a regulator. So they don't want to appoint a member of a current conservation authority to oversee the conservation authorities. That's just for clarity there. Further comments from the members, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor. My colleague, Councillor Mayette, expressed everything well, and we're both on the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority together, and it's leaving us with no seat at the table, I feel like. And the thing is we're still going to be paying for this, right? Like, I mean, we're going to be paying and supporting this without very much representation on the board. And if you look at the size of the Saugeen Valley Conservation, the Saugeen Valley watershed, how big that watershed is, and I guess it goes through Grey County a little bit. So what's that going to be? Maybe 2 people representing that. And the Ford government has done some good things, but it is consistently consolidating power, making appointments, and eroding the representation of smaller and rural municipalities. And I don't know what we can do about it, but that is my comments, and it's a really good report and they're excellent comments, and I fully endorse all your comments.
Thank you. Further comments, Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also had a question for Candace, Councillor Halpin, about costs and what our financial contribution may be, because we do make a significant financial contribution now, but we don't know that information, of course. The 21 reps total for the regional authority, Grey County gets 2, Bruce County, Huron County, Dufferin, and Wellington, and several other municipalities each get 1. So as you're right, our 8 municipalities within Bruce County, not all 8 would be part of this. No, I guess they would, yeah. So 8 municipalities within the county end up getting 1 representative. Now, the thing that when I was reading this, I was thinking, okay, that's the way we do our representation now, is representation by population. So on the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, Saugeen Shores gets 2, Kincardine gets 2. Does Hanover get 2? Just the 2 of us, just Kincardine and Saugeen Shores. West Gray, yes. But, and I was thinking, well, we are objecting, we like it now because we get 2 representatives, but the effect is so huge. I mean, the devastation to our representative level is so large that it is a different, I don't know whether they just did this because they thought, oh, that's the way that it's been done, or whether there's something more, some other motive behind, whether this is just laziness of how to organize this, it's the easy way out, or whether, so I'm hopeful maybe that if someone is considering this, and if we have strong enough advocates, that perhaps they may consider other factors than just simply representation by population.
Thank you. Councillor Davinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, one word sort of sums it up. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, considering the work that's been done by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. As Councillor Mayette said, we knew there was a hint that this was coming, and sure enough, it's before us. Hopefully, we can change things beforehand. May I suggest, whoever we send this to, that we send it to Lisa Thompson as well and rattle her cage so she knows what we are dealing with. She probably does, but it wouldn't hurt to remind her again. Thank you.
Yep, I'm certain we can do that. The Deputy Mayor?
I agree with everything that's been said. It's really interesting when you look at the charts too. Grey County was mentioned. Grey County, of course, in the grouping with us, has 2 representatives. But just if you look at another region, the Eastern Lake Erie Regional CA, Grey County, in this one, their population within that regulated area is 1,009. They get one representative there. It's like it makes no sense when you really look at it in terms of how it just looks, it's not sensical at all. It's nonsensical. Anyway, but so thank you, Candace, for the report. It's good to send something, but I think we all should send more or get other people to send comments as well.
Thank you. Further comments? I met at AMO with Minister of Natural Resources on this issue on behalf of the County of Bruce. Bruce County took the position that the Regional Conservation Authority should separate, essentially be divided in 2 to have the Simcoe region separated from the smaller rural, because it's really having Simcoe, having Barry and Simcoe mixed in with us, which is really what drowns out that rural voice in our area. I mean, it's got this huge urban population where, although we are fast growing, we're not fast growing like Simcoe is fast growing. And so, most of the attention and most of the resources we felt would be focused on Simcoe rather than on Bruce and Gray and the watersheds within our jurisdictions. So we made that suggestion to directly to the minister and made the point. I made the point to him. I led the delegation and made the point to him that it would if the government values rural voices as they say they do, then this is not a good configuration for this new authority. I can tell you based on that conversation, there will be no uptake on any suggestion that these boundaries should be adjusted whatsoever. So, I mean, the government's committed, and I heard that directly from the minister. So this is how they're going to roll this out. And I think this representation model is how it's going to be, which is unfortunate for the reasons everybody has said. For one, I believe that conservation authorities are in need of reform. And I think there are problems with the conservation authorities. I do like the notion of a provincial regulator to enforce consistency across the conservation authorities, because I find they are very inconsistent, and I hear that all the time. So reform is necessary. Sadly, I don't see how this approach achieves the reform we need. I don't really understand how the outcome will be better. What do we want? We want an outcome that's better for people who are trying to do things in our watersheds, for our property owners, for people who are trying to build affordable housing, people who are trying to make life, do something to make their own lives, make their own property better, and to do it in a way that doesn't threaten the watershed or get them too close to a flooding condition, all those things. We want that to work better. And I don't exactly understand how these changes do that. And also I worry, more than the representation piece, I worry that what will happen is we'll see money, the money now that the County of Bruce will be paying, going into this larger regional authority and heading to Simcoe, and that the focus will be in Simcoe and not on investments here in our conservation areas and all those assets Councillor Mayette just mentioned that the Conservation Authority owns, and in better services to people on the ground in our communities, which is what we want. So I guess the proof will be in the pudding, but I will report to you that it was not just a sense, it was explicit that this isn't going to change. Not to say we shouldn't make the point, we should, but that was the message that I received loud and clear. All right. If there's nothing further, you've heard the recommendation. It's been moved and seconded. So all in favor? That is carried. Okay. So now we're on to the consent agenda. I guess how much longer will we be going on here? Maybe a little while longer. Why don't we let's take a break here. We'll break until 8:50. Okay, guys, let's do it. Okay, so we are now on to the consent agenda. Only one item there. There's a resolution that item 10.1 be approved and received for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Gray, seconded by Davinsky. There's the one item there then, the Bell Communications Tower. Anybody wish to speak to that in any way? The Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Through you, I had a hard time reading the concurrence package information, so perhaps this was in there, so I apologize if it was, but the reference to barbed wire around the telecommunications tower, I understand the need for safety and security. However, it wasn't clear from the drawing how close this was going to be to the sidewalk, and is there any potential whatsoever for any kind of opportunity to put some landscaping there so that the sound isn't on? Sorry.
Hold on a second. I guess you're hearing that from somebody that they're not hearing us. Okay. Deputy Mayor Karen.
I was just about to talk about barbed wire. So I just was curious, how close to the sidewalk is this tower? It wasn't, I couldn't figure that out from the map. And it was mentioned about barbed wire being around the installation. I understand for safety and security that would be necessary. However, it's a pretty prominent location adjacent to the highway in Port Elgin and in an area where, you know, we're trying to get other businesses to do a little aesthetic improvement along the highway. Is there any potential to encourage or to require, I realize it's on private property, but to require some consideration to the look? So three questions there. How close to the sidewalk is it? Do we have any potential, and can we ask for landscaping?
The manager.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So there is a plan included in the concurrence package, and what it's showing is that the tower itself will be located in the center of what is the compound, and there is a distance for the access, which is showing at 7.28 meters to the concrete sidewalk. So that's the answer to the distance of the area to the existing sidewalk. In terms of landscaping or any sort of site design considerations, this pole is actually exempt from requiring a building permit, is exempt from needing site plan control. And so while there can be comments that are forwarded on, there wouldn't be any necessarily requirements per se in terms of what the final design will look like.
The Deputy Mayor.
Would it be appropriate then to encourage, you know, we do have some design guidelines and some examples nearby where things have happened adjacent to the sidewalk, adjacent to the highway, to provide some encouragement either to the property owner or to the builder of the tower themselves to you know, do what they can do to make it look a little more attractive from the street?
The manager.
I can certainly pass that along to the applicant.
Okay, any other comments on this one? Seeing none, then this will consider the resolution then on the consent agenda. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so now we will move on to motions and notices of motion. There are two notices there, 11.1.1 and 11.1.2. Those two items will be considered at the next council meeting. And then we're on to the one for consideration, which I have a pecuniary interest in, so I'm going to turn that to the deputy mayor.
Okay, we have a notice or a motion moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Grace, and it reads, whereas Highway 21 between Concession 10 in Port Elgin and South Street in Southampton is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, MTO, and whereas the Saugeen Rail Trail, SRT, is a year-round multi-use trail and designated active transportation corridor built on a former railway line, which directly connects 3 communities within the town of Saugeen Shores. And whereas the SRT serves as a key active transportation connection between Port Elgin and Southampton, with several access points along the corridor between Concession 10 and South Street that are regularly used by trail users. And whereas the corridor is utilized by residents, daily commuters, visitors, tourists, cyclists, pedestrians, and users of the SRT, resulting in increased interaction between active transportation users and high-speed vehicular traffic. And whereas there are commercial businesses, agricultural properties, and 4 partially controlled intersections located along this section of Highway 21, generating regular vehicular movements and additional conflict points for all road users, especially during peak seasons. And whereas the Saugeen Rail Trail Association has requested that the speed limit on this section of Highway 21 be reduced from 80 kilometers per hour to 60 kilometers per hour due to safety concerns. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores formally requests that the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario review the posted speed limit on Highway 21 between Concession 10 in Port Elgin and South Street in Southampton, and consider reducing the speed limit to 60 kilometers per hour, and further, that this resolution be circulated to the Honorable Pragmeet Sarkaria, Minister of Transportation, the MTO West Region Office, Lisa Thompson, MPP for Huron Bruce, and the Saugeen Rail Trail Association for information and support. Again, it's moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Grace. I will open it up for discussion. Councillor Halpin first, then Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and through you. I really believe we need to support this. The traffic continually increases as our community is growing. Something needs to be done for safety. A lower speed limit will also benefit the cars entering and exiting the many ways you can enter and exit Highway 21 in that section, including, of course, County Road 3 junction. You know, I know Councillor Grace is going to discuss this more and has much to say about this, but the town has a binder, I've told about this thick on this file to try to move it forward. I just want to acknowledge and thank the Saugeen Rail Trail and Ken Mercer, the chairman of the rail trail, for initiating this. This was his initiation. He asked me to do. And I'm just looking for my colleagues' support on this. Thank you.
Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to Councillor Halpin. Councillor Halpin, you were at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario last week. Did you get a chance to talk to any MTO members about this notice of motion?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. No, we did not. We made 3 delegations, but we did not make a delegation to the minister. I did see him there. He was answering questions during the question and answer period. And, but no.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I do have some background comments to support Councillor Halpin's motion. The town has been working on this issue since before 2013. I was a member of the Rail Trail Association as a board council representative, and wrote a motion which was passed by council to request that the MTO visit and assess the conditions around this section of road. In early June 2017, they did visit. They presented a summary of their findings, which were presented to council. Their conclusions were, first, that a speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour does not permit a pedestrian signal or crossover. They indicated that they thought that the 80-kilometer speed limit was appropriate because the area is zoned agricultural. So the minimum driveway separation is far enough apart to permit that speed limit. They also presented a psychological argument, saying that when one is driving out of town, drivers expect to drive 80 kilometers an hour because they think speed naturally increases out of town. And that if the speed was reduced to 60 kilometers an hour, this would cause an extra hazard to trail users who expect slower speeds, but the drivers won't slow down. And that would give trail users a false sense of security. So that was the way it was left in 2017. The MTO rejected the council requests and the rail trail requests for some kind of added security safety measures. In January 2023, I was part of a delegation to the MTO at the Roma conference, and we specifically asked the ministry to consider some additional facts and changed circumstances since 2017. We argued that the 2017 ministry decision was based on their understanding that the surrounding area is zoned agricultural. However, the lands adjacent to the highway are also zoned agricultural, commercial, and commercial recreational, and that this type of zoning has affected and increased the number and placement of driveways and entrances with businesses like a commercial nursery, garage, storage, the farm produce market, a number of residences, and a campground. Other changes, the number and placement of driveways since 2017. As of 2023, there were 15 entrances to the highway between Bruce County Road 3 and the 10th concession. Of those, 12 were commercial or residential, and 3 were road entrances. Also, other changes, a storage facility entrance was immediately adjacent to a new one was immediately adjacent to the Eastern Rail Trail entrance, and the Highbury Farms entrance moved farther to the south. To respond to the MTO's psychological arguments that drivers will still speed, but those using the crossings will expect slower speeds and will therefore be more vulnerable. We argued that just to the north of Bruce County Road 3, the speed limit on Highway 21 lowers to 60 kilometers an hour for about half the distance between Southampton and Port Elgin. This is routinely enforced by the town's police force and generally respected by drivers. The 60 kilometer an hour speed limit on Highway 21 through Saugeen First Nation is largely respected by drivers. And on their roads, Bruce County has recently reduced the speed limit to 70 kilometers an hour for significant stretches in agricultural zones approaching and leaving hamlets and villages. Also, that the timing of the study in early June of 2017 was a time that didn't allow the MTO to see the period of busiest use of the rail trail crossing, as well as the increased use of the highway from 2017 to 2023, because our permanent population had grown 16% between 2016 and 2021, and that we are a very popular tourist destination, and our seasonal population and visitors increase those numbers as well. On the issue of driver inconvenience, that 60 kilometers an hour is too slow. My husband and I both drove separately and timed the driving of the stretch at various speeds, 60 and 80 kilometers an hour. And we recorded multiple times a difference of about 1.5 minutes. Okay, a resident recently suggested that we keep the speed the same. It would be too dangerous to otherwise, but that the solution would be creating a pedestrian crossover similar to the pedestrian activated crossovers in Southampton. I looked up the most recent edition of the Ontario Traffic Manual, Book 12, which was last published in July 2024. And in its section on pedestrian crossovers, it says that, quote, pedestrian crossovers are intended for low to moderate volume, low speed roadways, specifically 60 kilometers an hour or less posted speed. So unless the speed is reduced, if there ever was a hope to be a pedestrian crossover, which has been routinely rejected by the MTO, that's the only way it would ever be able to be done under the current traffic regulations. Town staff continues to work with the Ministry of Transportation to investigate various solutions, including not just the speed limit, but trail signage, the question of pedestrian crossovers and shoulder paving. As I said, the MTO has consistently rejected the solution of a pedestrian crossover. I do support the proposed motion. Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt and then Councillor Myatt.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I'd like to take this a little, I'm going to support the motion, Councillor Halpin and Grace. I think it's worth another try. I'm going to take this a little different direction. I think, as we all know, that the MTOs, Councillor Grace alluded to, they determine the number of laneways that front on Highway 21 does not meet that threshold, allow for speed limit change. And that's been their stance. I joined staff here in 2001. That's been their stance from the last 25 years. It's probably going to continue to be their stance. And I think we're dreaming. If we're thinking about an overhead pass or an underground tunnel, I think we'll be waiting forever. And I'm going to take this a little different direction. And the neighbors may not like to hear this, but in 2028, I think it is, in the 10-year capital plan. And just hear me out on this, because I think this is something I'd like staff to think about and council to think, the future council to think about. In 2028, I think there's, in the 10-year capital plan, there's provisions for a controlled intersection at the intersection of Concession 10, Highway 21. There's talk about that. And I tell you why, there needs to be talk about that, because you got a brand new public school coming in off of Concession 10 and probably a Catholic school within the next 4 or 5 years. There can be a ton of traffic using Concession 10. You're going to have a controlled intersection at Concession 10. Here's my thought. I believe that the MTO should expropriate. And they need to expropriate land on the west side of the highway. And I say those property owners, we know who they are. There's 3 of them, 3 major property owners. But you talk to the MTO and take it in that direction. I think to get the speed limit reduced from 80 to 60, I think you're going to be fighting that for a long time. I think you're going to be fighting that for a very long time. And there's going to continue to be near accidents, serious accidents. And we see them ourselves when we're driving along there. People trying to cross. Just the other day, it was close. There was a close situation. But I think you need to take the cyclists and the walkers off of the rail trail, move them 300 meters, turn left. If you picture coming north on the rail trail and behind the Plex, I'm talking about on Wellington Street, you turn left to the controlled intersection. You cross safely with lights. You cross safe. There are going to be lights there at that intersection. You cross safely at the intersection. You go on the west side of the road, you talk to the MTO about expropriating and get it done. If they can't see their way to getting that speed limit reduced from 80 to 60, then look at another way of doing it. And the other way of doing it could be by moving all of those pedestrian cyclists on, you fill in the ditch on the west side of the road and you take those cyclist walkers right up to that rail trail. You eliminate that section of trail where they have to cross that busy highway. It's going to be a risk forever, folks. It is. And I think we need to think outside the box. I really do. I mean that very sincerely. I think you need to think outside the box, take the cyclists to the controlled intersection, talk to the MTO about expropriation and get it done. That's, I think, the new approach you need to. I'll support the motion because I think you put a lot of work into it. Try it again. I joined staff in 2001. I think this is 4 or 5 times now that the MTO has been approached about reducing the speed limit. I think it'll be waiting forever. I just don't think it's going to get done. You're not going to see an overhead pass or a tunnel. Look at another way of doing it, and that's, I think, cross at the control intersection. Anyways, that's my thought.
Councillor Matt?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Grace and I agree on many things. This is not one of them. In 2017, the council of the day purposely struck out the recommendation to go from 80 to 60 kilometers an hour, and we did that after significant debate and careful thought. And despite that, it was represented at Roma a couple of years ago that we had passed a resolution to that effect, and it was, and you apologized, and you did. You misunderstood how the motion went. I don't think that changing the speed limit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for what are a few days in the summer when it's difficult to cross that road is sound planning. If you're going to try and cross that road on Friday afternoon between 2 and 6 o'clock in the evening, or a lot of afternoons during rush hour, Bruce Power rush hour, and there's a rush hour here now, you're going to have some trouble. But there are many times you can cross that road. Go try it on a Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. You can walk across there, you can crawl across there, you won't get hit by a car. So making permanent solutions to temporary problems is not sound planning, in my opinion. I drive that road. I don't drive it every day, but I drive it fairly frequently. And if I see some cyclists or walkers on the side of the road trying to cross, I slow down. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, but I can see people standing on the side of the road. I'll slow down and I'll maybe even give them a wave across, even if it means holding up some cars behind me. That's what conscientious drivers do. We haven't, knock wood, we have not had a serious bicycle, pedestrian, car collision at that intersection. Where our previous director of engineering used to say, when plans are made around controlled intersections and speed limits, they use statistics. And I can't get that word out. Statistics say that if you have one accident, it's an isolated event. If you have 2, it's a trend. If you have 3, it's a problem. When you have 3 accidents at an intersection, that's when they start looking at making changes for solutions. We're at 0. Thank God we're at 0, because usually between a bicycle and a car, the bicycle or the pedestrian doesn't fare as well. But we haven't had the problem because drivers are generally courteous, and smart pedestrians and smart cyclists don't go at the peak times of day, peak times of the summer. After Labor Day, traffic drops right off, except for maybe half an hour in the morning and half hour in the evening. So I don't think that warrants it. I agree with the Vice Deputy Mayor that the MTO is not going to support this anyway. They've been asked lots of times. That just the traffic counts don't support it. The rural designation doesn't support it, and the number of driveways doesn't support it. So I know it's going to pass because I can see the nods around the room, but it's futile, and I won't be supporting it. But good luck getting it done in the future.
Councillor Stack.
Thank you. So maybe two things. So I use the rail trail a lot in the summer. I do find the one advantage of the 80 kilometers is that I'm always in desperate need of a respiratory break at that point. So I will say the traffic does help. However, I think the issue is really, it's kind of probability versus consequence here. So the probability is perhaps at this point low that someone will get hurt or killed, but the consequence is high. And I think where my concern is less about the adults that cross the road, but I don't know if you've ever spoken to a 13 to 17-year-old teenager, for instance. Their attention spans and awareness of their surroundings is often not 10 out of 10. So I think from my perspective, I think it's a worthwhile issue to continue to raise just for the basis that we do have a lot of kids using those paths, ideally with helmets and without their cell phone in the hand. But I've seen several instances of kids on bikes, on e-scooters, on regular scooters crossing that road. So I just think it's a worthwhile exercise, even if nothing comes of it, because the MTO has its views. I think continuing to raise awareness of the potential risk is, I think, worthwhile.
Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you. Councillor Mayette, I kind of supported you on that last time, and that was the wrong thing to do as a guy on the rail trail, I found out. But so I'm back here with hat in hand asking that this be done again. I just want to mention that the rail trail on its own dime has started the engineering for paving the shoulders. They are working very hard at this, and I just want to tell you how passionate they are about getting this crossing looked after. And so they have the engineering in. It's just a shame that Raul left when he did, because he was really, I felt like he was really kind of championing this and making some headway with the MTO. And so, the rail trail has worked hard on this, and Councillor or Vice Deputy Mayor, I love your idea. That is a really long-term idea, but that is a good idea. And thank you for that. And you know what? You just need sometimes to keep asking. Going to AMO, I went to a delegation once and they had no on their face this first minute we walked in there. We went the next time and we asked and they said, well, and then we went back and then we got the money. So, if you don't keep asking, if we don't ask, we know it'll never happen. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt.
I just want to say, I just want to plead with you one more time, is meet with the MTO. If they won't pass the speed limit this time, if this fails again, talk to the MTO. The neighbors won't be too happy about it, but talk about that 20 feet, filling in the ditch and moving the trail on the west side of the road, crossing at a controlled intersection. Just want to repeat that. I just think it's got a lot of merit.
I agree with you about the west side of the road. I would be curious to know if the longer term plan though is not a signal, but a roundabout at concession 10 on the highway, which sets up an opportunity still, but a little different. And I would also add that heading in the other direction on the east side of the road, when we recently repaved Carlisle, we did put tiny, but there is definitely a little asphalt section off the traveled portion of the road, which has been increasingly used by cyclists. But getting from where Carlisle hits County Road 3 across in front of basically 4 properties, Shane Gregg, Everest, the church, and the property at the corner. There was no opportunity for that either, because that seemed like a short stretch too, and because it would enable a different route, but without having to cross the highway. So I agree with you about that. But is there any other comments at the moment? Councillor Mayette?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just finally, somebody mentioned e-scooters and e-bikes, and this is where the accident's going to happen, because these e-scooters and e-bikes have a greater potential to speed into that intersection. And there are inattentive drivers who are driving, because the Saugeen Rail Trail, let's face it, it's lost its non-motorized status as far as I'm concerned. These electric bicycles, they'll do 30, 40 kilometers an hour, and you can modify them to go faster than that, and these scooters and everything else. If we have an accident, I think that's where it's going to be. It's going to be one of these bikes. You got a, young boy or young girl riding a bicycle that they're not used to the speed and acceleration, and they're going to come up to an intersection like that. So hopefully not, but that seems to be part of the problem too, is even, if you're riding a bicycle or walking your dog on the rail trail, these bikes are going by at a, when you're walking 40 kilometers an hour is pretty fast. So just thought I'd point that out.
Well, thank you. Seeing no further comments, we do have a motion before us. Again, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Grace. I'll call the question now. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And since the mayor has left the meeting, I will just continue along. Item 13 on the agenda is bylaws. We have two bylaws before us. Bylaw 83-2026, local plan amendment L-2025-016 by SKG Holdings Incorporated. And bylaw 84-2026, zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-027 by SKG Holdings Incorporated. I have a recommendation that these two bylaws are hereby read, passed, and sealed this 24th day of August 2026. Sorry, this 24th day of August 2026. Can I have a mover and a second for that? Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Councillor Halpin. Any discussion to the two bylaws? And note that Councillor Grace did leave. All those in favor? That's carried. Then we have a confirmatory bylaw. I have a recommendation that bylaw 85-2026, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 24th day of August 2026. Moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Councillor Stack. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Then I have a recommendation that this regular council meeting of August 24th, 2026 hereby adjourns at 9:25 p.m. Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Councillor Stack. All those in favor? That's carried.